If you watched my last video, you may remember that we talked about the feeling of being lost. And I want to continue that conversation today. Not because I want to repeat what we talked about, but because I think there's another layer to it. In the last episode, we looked at the possibility that maybe you're not lost at all. Maybe you're changing. Maybe you're outgrowing parts of your life that once fit you. But that leaves us with another question. What do we do when we don't know what's next? Because realizing that you're changing doesn't automatically give you a new direction. Sometimes you're standing there with no idea where the road is going. And maybe that's actually okay. So today I want to look at 4 ideas that take us one step further. Number 4, we mistake certainty for safety. I think most of us spend a surprising amount of our lives trying to feel certain. We want to know we're making the right decision. We want to know that the relationship we're in is right, that we're on the right career path, that we're making good choices with our time, that the future is going to work out. And when we don't know, we get uncomfortable. So we start looking for certainty. We research, we plan, we ask other people what they think, we make lists. We sometimes even make decisions simply because we're making a decision feels better than sitting in uncertainty. But here's the thing. Certainty doesn't actually exist. Not completely. We can make thoughtful decisions. We can prepare. We can be responsible. But we can't know what life is going to bring us. And maybe that's one of the reasons we feel lost sometimes. We're waiting for a level of certainty that life was never going to give us. Think about how many things in your life you once felt completely certain about that turned out differently than you expected. The job you thought you'd have forever. The person you thought you'd always be. The place you thought you'd live. The things that you thought would make you happy. Life changed, and you changed with it. So maybe the goal isn't to become certain. Maybe the goal is to become comfortable moving without certainty. And that's a different kind of confidence. Number 3, life was never meant to be a straight line. We've been given a very particular picture of what a successful life is supposed to look like. You grow up, you go to school, you find a career, you build your life. You accomplish things, and then you keep moving forward. It's almost as if we're supposed to climb a ladder, and every year we should be standing on a higher rung. But real life doesn't look like that. We go forward, then backward, then sideways. We start over. We change our minds. We discover something at 45 that we never knew we wanted at 25. We let go of things we worked incredibly hard to build, and sometimes we return to something we thought we left behind. That's not necessarily failure. That's just being human. Nature doesn't move in straight lines either. A river doesn't travel from one point to another by taking the most efficient route. It bends, it widens, it narrows, it meets obstacles, it changes direction. And yet, it's still moving. There's something very peaceful about that idea. We don't have to force life into a perfectly straight line in order for it to be meaningful. Maybe some of the twists and turns aren't interruptions to your life. Maybe they're part of it. Number 2, you can live the question. This might be the hardest one, because when we're uncertain about our future, we often put our lives on hold. We tell ourselves, once I figure this out, then once I know what I want, once I know where I'm going, once I know this is the right decision, then I'll feel settled. Then I'll enjoy myself. Then I'll start something new. But what if you don't have to wait? What if you can live your life while you're still figuring it out? You can be certain about your career and still have a beautiful day. You can question your direction and still take care of your body. You can be unsure about the future and still love the people around you. You can be in the middle of changing and still create something. You can have unanswered questions and still experience your life. I think that's an important distinction. We don't have to solve our entire lives before we're allowed to live them. Sometimes we become so focused on figuring out where we're going that we forget to experience where we actually are. And maybe that's part of the reason slowing down can be so powerful. When you stop demanding an answer from every moment, you can actually start noticing the moment. Number 1, maybe the point isn't to find your way. And this brings me back to the question I started with. What if you're not lost? What if there isn't one perfect path that you're supposed to discover? We've been taught to ask, am I on the right path? But maybe there's another question that's more useful. Am I paying attention to the path I'm on? Am I noticing what feels right? Am I noticing what doesn't? Am I willing to change when something no longer fits? Am I listening to myself? Am I present enough to recognize when life is asking me to turn? Because maybe living well isn't about knowing exactly where you're going. Maybe it's about being awake enough to respond to where you are. That's a subtle difference. You don't need to have your entire future figured out, but you do need to be present enough to notice your life. Maybe that's what trust really looks like. Not believing that everything will happen exactly the way you want, but trusting yourself enough to meet whatever comes next. So if you've been feeling uncertain lately, I don't want you to automatically assume that something has gone wrong. And I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't make plans or have goals. Of course you should. But maybe you can hold those plans a little more lightly. You can have direction without demanding certainty. You can have goals without believing they define your worth. You can make decisions without knowing exactly how everything will turn out. And you can keep moving, even when you can't see the whole road. Maybe that's what we're really learning as we get older. Not how to have all the answers, but how to live well with the questions. How to stay curious. How to adjust. How to let go when something no longer fits. How to recognize when something new is beginning. And how to trust that we don't have to control every turn. So maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're simply on a part of the road you haven't seen before. And maybe you don't need to know exactly where it leads. You just need to be awake enough to notice where you are and willing to take the next steps when it appears. Because perhaps the goal was never to find the perfect path. Perhaps the goal was to learn how to walk your path. And that changes the question completely. Instead of asking, where am I supposed to be going? We can begin asking, how do I want to live while I'm here? And maybe that's a question worth taking with you. Thank you for spending this time with me, and take good care of yourself.